You can take a terrible experience and you can write a poem about it, or you can write a song about it, and suddenly, you've just taken this very awful, dark thing and you've transmuted it into something beautiful. And so I really believe that that's the power of art. And I think a lot of me personally, my resilience throughout all the seasons of my life has been coming back to that place of artistry, because it allows me to take the broken pieces and put them together in a way that is really beautiful. Or in the case of times when I've had, really oppressive interpersonal relationships where I've felt like I've been trapped with an abusive partner, or I felt that I've been, coercively controlled by somebody who does not have my best interests in mind. Those are times when I can take those experiences and walk away from them and get myself into a safe place, of course, but then ultimately create something out of that that's just for me, right? A piece of music, a piece of poetry, something that nobody can take away from me, that is just, it's mine. It's got my thumbprint on it, it's mine, and it's my experience, and I can take it and turn it into something beautiful. Like that's my dragonfly wings, right?
Absolutely. And having done that, essentially with you doing that for yourself, then being able to look back at it and, like, quoting you again in the foreword, my hope is that ends. My hope is that you can find the same universal sense of joy, expansiveness, and grappling in these poems that I found while writing them, as stories interweave after all. And there's some other references to slightly earlier in the foreword. I like to think that as artists and humans, our creativity gives us hope and ultimately resilience. You were talking about resilience. Could you expand a bit more on the relationship between your experience of going from that kind of situation, creating something entirely for yourself, and then this other experience of discovering that what you've done entirely for yourself actually is a story that belongs to everyone else?
Yeah. I think it's so universal to have these experiences, and I get, I think, I've had a lot of times in my life where I've thought I'm suffering and I'm the only one that's suffering. I think we've all gotten lost in those ego traps. Where it's like, nobody else knows how bad I feel. It's the worst, But interestingly enough, I found that getting out and talking to people, you will find that everybody has stories like that. Everybody is suffering. I don't know. And finding ways to talk about it. A lot of times people will just suffer in silence. So what seems like we're suffering alone is really just everybody else is suffering too. It's just everybody's kind of scared to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And so I think, like, one cool thing about poetry and music and art and stuff is that it creates a reason to talk about these things and a reason to kind of excavate these deep parts of our minds and hearts, right? Where we can kind of go, oh wait, that experience that I had, that interpersonal relationship that felt really icky to me, I know 10 other women or 10 other, people who have experienced something similar, right? These interpersonal relationships can be very, very good fodder for poetry, and also can be very destructive. And I've especially found that as a woman, of course, these types of maladaptive relationships happen across all genders, but as a woman and engaging in, the power dynamics that come from a patriarchal society, I think a lot of times I've found myself, because of some of the cultural norms around male-female relationships and around kind of, frankly, the way that power dynamics often play out in these monogamous relationships between men and women. There is a lot of coercive control that I'd experienced as a young woman, especially growing up in North Dakota, where things are a little bit less talked about, things are a lot more old-fashioned, right? Those types of experiences I found, they don't necessarily stop when, a woman will submit to those types of dynamics. Oftentimes they will only stop when the woman is destroyed, as we see very clearly, like in the case of Gabby Petito. And so I've definitely felt that I've been involved in those types of dynamics, probably in maybe 3 or 4 separate relationships in my life. And each time I've been struck with the fact that, if that person had their way, I would be dead, or I would be completely, just either dead or completely exiled or completely destroyed, right? And so I think pulling away from those relationships and finding a place of personal power in that is so powerful for anybody who's been subjugated to the relationship dynamics of coercive control, right? I talk a lot about women because it's very common in a patriarchal society, but it totally happens with, with men and female narcissists or whatever as well. Not to stigmatize narcissism, as it's just another mental health issue, but it can create some very destructive interpersonal dynamics that can be very damaging to people. So I don't know, I guess with all that being said, I think, coming out of those experiences and kind of standing in your own truth and being like, nope, I'm not gonna allow myself to be destroyed, right? This is not,
that's one of
this is not okay,
I just wrote a song called I Don't Want to Be Destroyed.
Yeah. You can relate, right?
Yes, I can relate.
Yeah.
The final song on the record is what I feel is the natural thing to talk about now.
Yeah.
My Name is Ruby.
Yeah.
So you agree, why do we find ourselves talking about My Name is Ruby now, on the back of what we were just talking about?
Yeah, well, because it's a song about overcoming certain dynamics and trying to stand tall in your own truth, right? Even if other people are set to, I don't know, not like your truth or not like to be accountable for your truth or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. There is also in this song the felt awareness that in speaking out, in standing tall to speak my truth and demanding respect, which is quoting the lyrics there, even though my voice is shook, there is something significant happening, yes, for me and my awareness of who I am and owning my story and stepping into my power, but also not just for me. That comes through. That same thing that's in the foreword in the poetry collection is in this song too. But I stand my ground, my heart is strong. I use my voice to sing this song for every woman hurt by tainted love.
Yeah.
So, and that comes through, that's in the poetry collection, particularly in the foreword.
Yeah.
But I feel that it comes through most explicitly in this song.
Yeah.
Could you reflect a bit on what it is about this song, perhaps bringing in focus on music and the other instrumentation, perhaps? What is it about this song that led to this confident vocalization of this faith that in singing this song, something is happening for every woman hurt by tainted love?
Yeah, I think honestly the song is kind of a feminist manifesto about being a woman in the music industry. There's a lot of layers to it, and I feel like there have been times when I've felt that there is maybe rampant sexism happening in certain spaces, and I've tried to say something, and instead of being met with what I would hope is like this is something that we all need to address, let's constructively talk about it and try to work on it, which is actually a reaction that oftentimes does happen, but sometimes you don't get that reaction. And sometimes you get people's reaction, and this is about a particular experience that I'd had where I brought up like, hey, this doesn't really feel safe here, and I'm hearing about lots of really unsafe things happening in this particular space, and instead of people, which you would think they would say, oh dear, let's try to come together and solve this problem, instead they will actually say, no, you're crazy, and you're just some crazy woman, and we don't have to listen to you because what you think is unsafe is just normal for us. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of a feminist manifesto based off of having an experience with those types of people, because those are not circles that I generally run in. I tend to be involved in circles of people who, when we have these conversations, they're like, oh, let's figure this out. That's really normal and healthy. But this was a particular circle that I was in that was not receptive to that feedback, and it was very hurtful and very harmful to myself and many women who had been involved in that space. So that's really what it's this feminist manifesto about that. And it's kind of just stepping back into my power and being like, I'm not crazy. Like, we all deserve basic human rights, and we all may, be humans and have, carnal desires and want to be, involved in, relationships with all sorts of different kinds of people, but that doesn't mean that we can't show up in a musical collaborative space as a woman and still be treated with the same equality as you would treat anybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Respect is key. Respect, which is the lyric in the song, demanding respect.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up My Name is Ruby, because it's one that it's very emotionally charged for me. And it's one that I actually, as I sat down and listened to the whole record, that particular song didn't fit. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because this is one of my most emotionally charged songs. I feel really strongly about it, but in some ways it's also a relic of Red Eye Ruby of the past, back when we were kind of like a jazz trio with cello and keys. And so the style is almost a relic of the past of the band. And so when you listen to the first 6 songs on the EP and then My Name is Ruby, I was sitting here scratching my head going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because it doesn't fit. Like, it literally didn't fit. And so the phone call.
Yeah.
And that is so funny to me, because Matt Patrick is the dude in the phone call. And I don't know, do you know Matt?
Well enough to know that he isn't like that dude.
It just makes me laugh every time to hear Matt's voice. Hello?
Hey, I really enjoyed meeting you the other night.
Oh, it was so great to meet you too.
Well, when can I see you again?
Well, my band has a show tonight. You should come.
A show? What? Oh, are you some kind of groupie or something?
It's my band. I'm playing tonight.
I got you. Yeah, I'll be there. Maybe afterwards you and I can, hang out at my place.
Well, like I said, we just met. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll come see you tonight. If you come see me after.
Are you some kind of groupie?
Right.
No, it's my show.
Which somebody actually said that to me once.
Oh, really?
In my stage clothes. Yeah, I was standing outside of, I think it was Pimento. I had a show down at Pimento. I was standing outside of my stage clothes. There's people walking by. It was pre-COVID, super busy. I'm like, come in and come to the show. And it was actually a woman that came up to me and she said, what are you, your band? Oh, your band? Oh, are you some kind of a groupie or something? She looks me up and down on my stage clothes, Groupie? Excuse me.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, nothing wrong with, hanging out with band members, but the groupie thing is very weird.
Just the assumption that.
Yeah. The assumption, but also just like the term, I think is just pretty icky. But but anyway, it was very funny. So I called Matt, and this was like 3-4 weeks ago, because I'm sitting here, I'd been freaking out about this disconnect with this song for so long, going, oh my God, it's like one of my favorite songs on the record and it doesn't fit. And so I called Matt and I was like, can we just like make a track that will kind of like ease the listener into, the strings and like, because my friend Myra came, because that song is a feminist manifesto.
Yeah, and Myra as in Myra and the Moonshine.
Yeah. And so she came in and put her guitar part on there. Her guitar part's, she's amazing, right? She's such an accomplished guitar player and vocalist and just musician in general. But for me, her guitar playing really, really is just, it's so inspiring. And so when she came and put the guitar on the record, it was a song that I knew that, she and many other women could relate to. Maybe not having the same exact experience as myself, but I think every woman in the music industry knows what it's like to feel othered or feel like, I don't know, kind of feel like we're not able to participate in the equally collaborative space because we're being pursued as a dating option or being, pursued as a sexual object or something, And I think as I've been running a jam in St. Paul with a really good friend of mine who's very into like safe spaces and very open to, kind of problem solve around some of these issues. Yes. But I've been talking with him lately about what it's like being a woman at a jam, because oftentimes men will come in and they'll see me and they go, they want to flirt with me, or they want to ask me out on a date, or they want to see if I want to go home with them later. And, men get to go into these spaces without any of that pressure and none of that psychological kind of cloud around them. And so we've been kind of trying to brainstorm ways to, not only for myself, but also for other women to be able to come into these spaces and not have that behavior really be allowed. I mean, if I walk into a professional workplace, that's ideally not happening, and if it is, it's sexual harassment and it's being reported to HR. But in these music spaces, we really don't have the same idea, and we really should. And that song also spins off of that as well.
So you and Dante are ensuring that is in place.
Yeah, we're working on it
for the jam. And so when did the jams occur?
They are at KJ's Hideaway in St. Paul on generally every last Saturday of the month, and it's been really fun. It's been really cool, but it's also been a window for me into trying to understand why you walk into a lot of these spaces and it's a lot of men. And it's not because women aren't interested, or it's not because we don't want to go. It's a lot of times because we show up and we get hit on a bunch and we kind of feel bummed out. We don't really want to go back. And that's been fun for me to try to be like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, we need to like find a way around this, and just setting some guidelines, and just this is an equal collaborative space. We're all here to collaborate. We're not here to, this isn't speed dating,
Right.
If you want to date somebody,
Yes.
maybe add them as a Facebook friend and hit them up in a couple days or something. Like, if they're interested, you can have a drink. Like, but we're not coming to the jam
That's not
to
what
flirt
this
with
is.
each other. We're
Yeah.
coming to the jam to collaborate. Yeah.
Yeah. And the collaboration, the experience of the melody, the groove, the deep vibes,
Yeah.
and the truth,
Yeah.
that then happens as a result of having that be what occurs in that space.
Yeah.
Has a existentially, spiritually, is very significant.
Yeah.
And that is documented in this song, My Name is Ruby, through the experience of singing the song.
Yeah.
We transition from opening line, men with hearts too small to love have robbed me of my sense of self, to near the end of the song, this statement of identity, I am what I will always be, a deep and joyful soul here to seek love.
Yeah.
Could you say a bit about that being the fundamental, most essential, that being the essential self?
Yeah.
In relation to the album, in relation to the collection of poetry, this sense of most essentially being a deep and joyful soul here to seek love.
Yeah. Yeah, I think quite often women are reduced to their appearance or to, and that's a cultural thing. I don't want to alienate any one individual for doing that, because ultimately these are cultural norms that need to be dismantled and ultimately healed. But yeah, that's very common and especially as I've come into my own as a performer, I've kind of discovered my own stage aesthetic, which, it's a little provocative. And yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm gonna do. That's how it's gonna be. And oftentimes people get very confused because I think that they see a very provocative stage presence and go, oh, sex object, right? They think Marilyn Monroe, who, by the way, her life was very tough because of the same thing I'm talking about, right? This idea of oh, she's so beautiful. She's just an object. She doesn't have any feelings of her own. She can just be, howled at and fawned over, and it's fine. But really, that's not the case. And, every human being is their own deep person, of course. But I think that it's really common for lady players it kind of blows their minds. I see I see lady players I'm going to use Samantha Fish as an example, because she's just this lovely lady and she shreds on the guitar. And I've seen men kind of try to unpack this, men who maybe are not as far along on the path of deconstructing cultural norms as some other ones, right? And they see things like, she's this beautiful woman and she's so beautiful and she can play guitar like that. And it's just it's so hard for them
Right.
to understand that she can have this very intellectual, talented kind of academically focused musical side, and then also be this really just drop dead gorgeous woman. And it's kind of tough for people sometimes. And I think, normalizing that women can, and it's not even, a lot of times it's a lot of how we choose to present ourselves too. That a woman can present herself as being very feminine or being very aesthetically provocative, while also being, an intellectual being and an emotional being and, and a sexual being and just a human being, right?
Yes,
So
and
often
owning
it's
all of that.
yeah, it's the girl, who's just on the cover of the magazine and she's a 2D image, but that's not really the case. Right, it's a very deep and of course, right. But I think it's very embedded into our Western American culture that women who are perceived to be provocative are just 2D images of a sex object. And as much as I hate that, and as much as I know that not everybody prescribes to that, there's plenty who do, and I think there's a lot of work in undoing those types of stereotypes.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You said, talking about Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
You were saying
Yeah.
not to be. Did you use the phrase howled at?
Yeah, there's a story about that where was it the Golden Globes or something? It was some award ceremony where I think it was Frank Sinatra. It was the Rat Pack guys. She walked into this award ceremony, and they all got down on their hands and knees and they howled at her. You know, much to the annoyance of many of the other women in the room who felt, you know, like a certain way about that. And that story, I always think about that because not only was Marilyn kind of breaking, you know, like cutting edge in terms of her fashion. She was, you know, very, for her time, she was very provocative, right? But she was also the object of a lot of hatred by both men and women. And her mental health really suffered, and she died early as a result of, you know, the complications from that, I believe. And I think, you know, she is the ultimate sex symbol and also the ultimate sex object. She represents both like the divine feminine and also the way that society has denigrated and, you know, been derogatory towards the feminine. And I think she's a very interesting public figure to analyze in that regard.
Absolutely.
And I think like Amy Winehouse as well. You know, a lot of these talented, beautiful women who have burned out early because they're just being torn apart by the weight of society's hatred or love or expectation or weird fetishes, and it's just very difficult to be in that space as a woman. Yeah, brutal, really. Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to make sure that I heard correctly "Howl" is because, of course, I mean, you have a song called "Howl," and there's and to draw a contrast between the howling that is associated with your song "Howl," and then this very different instance.
Yeah.
So the members of the Rat Pack howling at Marilyn Monroe is, of course, a clear manifestation of that which we're talking about, dismantling the treating Marilyn as a sex object there. Yeah. What type of howling is happening in your song "Howl"?
Yeah, it's like a celebration, right? And being and in a lot of ways, I mean, that particular howling of the Rat Pack, it's not totally, you know, I mean, there's maybe some problems there that need to be dismantled, but there's also this primal kind of, you know, thing underneath it of this kind of celebration of raw human sexuality or raw human sensuality in the case of, you know, the Marilyn Monroe story that I think is also very valid. I don't want to totally dismiss the entire thing, but I want to, you know, there's a lot to unpack there. But that being said, in the song "Howl at the Moon," it's really, you know, coming back to the moon, right, is one of the, you know, and you're howling at the moon and the truth and the sun and the love and all of it, right?
Yeah, and there we encounter the happy creatures everywhere just doing what they please.
Yeah.
So what I find so intriguing about that song "Howl," which I've known for a long time, is the picture that we get of the non-human animal world, where the character who is singing can relate to, for example, the frogs sweetly singing, sounding so good to her. And then there's this disconnect with the human part of the animal world. There's a sense in which they're not doing what they please, and they don't even realize it. With the smiles. So in the previous verse, we look at, everywhere I go, you know, these people look so strange to me. They tip their hats in photographs. They are a mystery. Melancholy smiling eyes. This world is so weary. I don't know why they're smiling when they seem so sad to me. So there's this awareness, perhaps through the kinds of challenging experiences that we also encounter in the poetry collection. Something that comes of that is this perceptiveness, being able to read perhaps, you know, the different energies, and being aware, okay, this person is sad, but this person is not even aware that they're sad, and they're smiling. And then contrast that with the frogs that are sweetly singing, and the wolves that are howling. In alignment with how they feel. They are in alignment. They are joyful. And then the challenge that we have as humans to discover that, to discover to discover that joy, and I feel like that is in that juxtaposition of those two verses in Howl. It kind of sets the scene for the task of the human as presented, particularly in the poetry collection, I think.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because the song itself, that it's supposed to be kind of a commentary from that particular verse and into the rest of the song. It's kind of a commentary on, you know, I don't know, like, part of it was a commentary on social media. I wrote that song in 2012. I wrote it a long, long time ago, and I wrote those lyrics a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
But when I wrote them, I was thinking a lot about people who present themselves on social media as having this very perfect life. And then you realize that it's not really the case, and they're kind of almost putting this facade up so that people kind of, and I think we've all been guilty of that. I mean, I've done it too, where I'm just like, what do you mean everything's fine, you know? But ultimately, that sort of fronting, if you will, but also this idea of, for me, it was kind of breaking out of working in workplaces where I've had like a direct supervisor. I don't know, I feel like a lot of people who are working these jobs that, you know, they're told like, okay, you know, you're born, you go to school, you get out of school, you maybe go to college or you get a job, and that's what you do, and then you work, and then you know, retire, hopefully, and then you die, right? And I think, you know, I've sort of been questioning that a lot, right? And this idea, but there's many people who've devoted their entire lives to these hierarchical companies, and that's awesome, right? If that works for them. But oftentimes you'll see people kind of who are not super happy in those types of settings. And I think it's a reflection of myself as I'm coming into kind of just being like a freelancer, right? And understanding and the kind of that freedom of like, oh, I'm not that person anymore, right? I'm now a little bit happier, and I'm a little more free because I can tune into kind of, I don't know, just what I want to do, you know, like the intuitive kind of like, no, this is what I want to do, right? It's not what I feel like I should do to be happy or what somebody else says I should do. This is coming directly from me. And you see that a lot, like humans are very intellectual, and we've kind of intellectualized away. Cerebral is a great word. We've kind of intellectualized away our connection to our emotions or to our animalistic tendencies. And I mean, to an extent that can be okay. Like, I like to brush my teeth and have a clean house for sure. Although to be fair, I think that, you know, spiders also like to have a clean house, because they have these beautiful, there's a spider poem, and they have these beautiful webs, right? But anyway, but there's a balance there, and I think, you know, even in music, it's easy to be too cerebral and go, oh, well, this song is, the chord progression's too simple, and it's just no good because it's just too easy, and what will people think if I have such a simple song? But ultimately, if that's the musical palette that creates the emotional vehicle for emotional expression, whatever, you know. And Howl is a very simple song.
Yes.
And it's been one of my favorite songs to play for like 10 years because it just, I don't know, it's a vehicle for that poem. Well, but yeah, you bring up spiders. We talk about spiders.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of different ways that we could go.
Yeah.
What I feel most drawn to at the moment is connect with your wandering years self.
Yes.
Because
Very wandery.
on the back of what you were just saying about how cerebral we are, reason chills my bones and logic splits my brain.
Yeah.
In It Doesn't Matter, sane, insane, it's all the fucking same.
Yeah.
So that poem, I think, you know, a younger you is kind of resonating with what we were just recognizing about how cerebral our species is at this time.